What if I told you that one of the most influential streetwear brands on the planet didn't start in fashion, music, or on the streets at all? That before it showed up in rap videos, skate parks, and Paris boutiques, it lived in a world of steel, soot, and noise. Picture this: blistering heat, sparks flying off metal, men hanging from half-built bridges, and in the middle of that chaos, one simple jacket that refused to fall apart. For decades, that jacket was just a tool. It wasn't about style, it was about survival. And yet somehow that same brand would later end up on runways, in luxury collabs, and in the closets of people who'd never set foot on a construction site. This is the part of Carhartt's story most people never hear, the chapter where the brand almost vanished and then came back bigger than anyone expected. To understand how a small workwear company turned into a global symbol of authenticity, we have to go back to where it all started. One man, 5 workers, and an idea that refused to break. Humble beginnings. Carhartt wasn't born as a fashion label. It wasn't trying to be cool, clever, or trendy. It was trying to keep people alive long enough to bring home a paycheck. In 1889, in Detroit, a businessman named Hamilton Carhartt set up shop with nothing fancy: a few sewing machines, a tiny team, and one clear mission. He summed it up in a simple promise: honest value for an honest dollar. At the time, America was building itself at full speed. Railroads, factories, ships, bridges. The people doing that work didn't need delicate fabric that looked nice for a photograph. They needed gear that could handle splinters, sparks, oil, mud, freezing cold, and long days. Hamilton started talking directly to railroad workers. He asked them what they needed, what failed, what tore too fast. Then he built garments around their answers. Heavy duck canvas, triple-stitched seams, rivets in high-stress areas, reinforced knees and pockets. Carhartt overalls and jackets became armor for the working class. If you wore them, it meant you were the kind of person who didn't quit when things got hard. The clothes weren't there to impress anyone, they were there to take abuse. And over time, they earned trust. Rail workers wore them, farmers wore them, mechanics, miners, and builders wore them until the garments were stained, patched, and still somehow holding on. But here's the part people forget. Clothing companies don't live in a vacuum, they live inside economies. And the world that created Carhartt was about to change in a way that almost erased everything Hamilton built. Carhartt's near collapse. Jump forward to the 1970s and 80s. The same country that once couldn't build factories fast enough was now shutting them down. Globalization, automation, and economic shifts hit heavy industry first. Steel plants went quiet. Assembly lines slowed. Whole cities built on manufacturing started losing their lifeblood. For a brand like Carhartt, this was a nightmare. Its core customer wasn't the weekend hobbyist or the fashion crowd, it was the full-time, hands-in-the-dirt worker. And those jobs were disappearing. When the workers went home for good, so did a lot of the demand for heavy-duty workwear. Inside the company, the pressure was real. Orders dropped, warehouses filled with unsold stock. Some factories and departments had to close. The brand that had wrapped itself around the American working class now faced a painful question. If the work is gone, who are we for? Executives and family members had to wrestle with tough choices. Do they water down the product to chase cheaper markets? Do they abandon the identity of workwear completely and try to restart as something else? There were no easy answers, only risks. Plenty of other old names tried to reinvent themselves and got lost in the process. There was no guarantee Carhartt would survive. Plenty of heritage brands disappeared quietly during those years. The story could have ended there, with Carhartt becoming just another name remembered by collectors and old-timers. But it didn't. Because in a totally different corner of the culture, a new kind of customer was paying attention, and they were about to pull Carhartt into an unexpected second life.
Adopted by the streets. In the late 1980s and early 90s, far from the quiet factory towns, another kind of world was growing. The streets of New York, Detroit, Los Angeles, and beyond. Subways covered in graffiti, block parties, boom boxes, skaters grinding ledges until dawn. Young people were building their own culture, their own language, their own style. They wanted clothes that felt real, not delicate. When you're jumping fences, dodging traffic on a board, or standing outside in winter with your friends for hours, flimsy fabric doesn't cut it. That's when people started finding Carhartt gear at surplus shops, workwear stores, and union supply outlets. The jackets were boxy, heavy, and warm. The beanies were simple but solid. The pants could take a beating. Rappers, graffiti writers, and skaters didn't care that Carhartt was meant for railroad workers. They cared that it was tough and didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. Wearing Carhartt said, "I'm here to do something real, and I don't mind getting dirty." In music videos, magazine shoots, and street photos, the square Carhartt label started showing up again and again, almost by accident. Artists like Tupac and members of Wu-Tang Clan wore the brand because it fit the world they were living in. Skaters shredded stairs in Carhartt pants that somehow survived the falls. Graffiti crews pulled on Carhartt hoodies before heading out into the night. Without a major ad campaign aimed at them, without billboards or big slogans, the streets quietly adopted Carhartt as one of their own. What the company didn't fully realize at first was that this wasn't just a trend, it was a lifeline. The same ruggedness that once made sense on a railroad track now made sense on a street corner. And while that was saving the brand in America, another transformation was already taking shape across the ocean.
The birth of Carhartt WIP. In Europe, American street culture had its own kind of mythology. People watched the music videos, the films, the skate clips. They noticed the logos and the silhouettes. Among those paying attention was a Swiss entrepreneur named Edwin Fay. He saw that Carhartt, this unpolished American workwear brand, had a huge upside if it was adapted carefully for a different audience. Fay didn't want to fake anything. He respected the original DNA, durability, honest design, connection to the working class. But he also noticed something important. European customers, especially in cities like Berlin, Paris, London, and Amsterdam, wanted a slightly different fit and feel. They were drawn to the authenticity of Carhartt, but they didn't necessarily need the full, boxy, heavyweight American cuts for their daily lives. So in 1994, through a partnership, Carhartt WIP was created. WIP stands for Work in Progress, and that name says a lot. Instead of replacing Carhartt, WIP reinterpreted it. The jackets got cleaner lines, the pants were slightly slimmer, the fabric stayed tough, but the styling leaned more towards street than job site. The result? Clothes that still felt like Carhartt, but could move comfortably through clubs, galleries, skate parks, and city streets. Within a few years, Carhartt WIP stores and stockists began popping up across Europe. Skaters, graffiti artists, DJs, and underground musicians gravitated toward it. The brand sponsored skate teams, supported music scenes, and showed up wherever subcultures were forming. In cities like Berlin, Milan, and London, wearing Carhartt WIP said something about you. You weren't trying to flex wealth. You were signaling taste, independence, and a link to something real. By bridging American workwear with European street culture, Carhartt WIP built a community, not just a customer base. People didn't just buy a jacket, they stepped into a scene. And as that energy grew, it opened the door to something even bigger, the collaboration era.
The collaboration era. By the 2000s and 2010s, collaborations were no longer just side projects, they were big cultural events. When two strong brands teamed up, it created a moment, a drop, a story people wanted to be part of. Carhartt, thanks to its credibility in both workwear and street culture, became a perfect partner. The brand began linking up with names that defined different corners of the fashion and sneaker world. Supreme, Nike, Converse, AKC, Pata, Vetements, Junya Watanabe, and more. Each collaboration did something a little different. Some leaned into bold graphics, others kept things understated and minimal. But at the core, they all treated Carhartt's hard-wearing fabric and iconic silhouettes as a canvas. These projects weren't just about slapping two logos together, they were about merging audiences. Skaters who loved Supreme now had a reason to see Carhartt as part of their style identity. Sneakerheads who followed Nike releases suddenly found themselves hunting for co-branded Carhartt pieces. People who respected minimalist French design discovered Carhartt through APC. Limited releases sold out fast. Photos of collab pieces traveled across early blogs and later social media, sparking new demand in places Carhartt had never reached on its own. Every time a collaboration hit, it reinforced the same idea. This old workwear brand could stand next to the most influential names in streetwear and not look out of place. Every collab reinforced the same idea.
Carhartt wasn't trying to be something new every season, it was simply opening its doors to creative partners who could reinterpret its core. That consistency made the brand feel stable and trustworthy in a world where trends moved at high speed. But while collaborations pushed Carhartt deeper into the spotlight, something even more striking was happening nearby. The very top of the fashion pyramid was watching and quietly taking notes. How Carhartt influenced luxury fashion. Look at high-end runways over the last couple of decades, and you'll notice a strange pattern. Suddenly, clothes that look suspiciously like workwear are walking down the catwalk. Oversized jackets with big pockets, heavy-duty fabrics, earthy colors, utility vests, cargo pants with reinforced stitching. High fashion, which once obsessed over fragile fabrics and tight tailoring, started borrowing from the job site. Designers at houses like Balenciaga, Louis Vuitton, Off-White, and others began introducing collections that owed more to the factory floor than the ballroom. The ruggedness, the functionality, the no-nonsense aesthetic of brands like Carhartt had become aspirational. People weren't just buying luxury to show they had money, they wanted to show they understood real culture too. Carhartt never claimed credit for inventing workwear, but it undeniably helped define how workwear looked and felt in the modern era. When luxury brands sent models down the runway in clothes that looked ready for a construction site, they were echoing a visual language Carhartt had been speaking for a century. The message was clear. Durability could be desirable. Practical details could be beautiful. Clothes that were once symbols of blue-collar struggle now stood at the center of high-end style. And in that shift, Carhartt's influence became impossible to ignore.
Legacy of the working class. When you zoom out, the story of Carhartt is more than a brand biography. It's a mirror of how society sees work, identity, and status. From railroads to runways, from Detroit factories to Tokyo boutiques, Carhartt has carried the same core idea. Clothes should serve the person wearing them. It survived economic crashes, changes in manufacturing, and waves of cultural reinvention by holding on to that truth. Even when its original customer base shrank, the spirit of the working class lived on in the people who adopted the brand later. Artists, skaters, musicians, and everyday people who respected effort over appearance. That's why Carhartt doesn't feel like a costume. It doesn't feel like a joke when someone who's never welded anything in their life puts on a Carhartt jacket. The symbolism has expanded. It now stands for something broader. Being grounded, being real, choosing function over flash, even inside a world obsessed with images. Think about how many logos come and go on social media, trending for a month and then disappearing. Carhartt's square patch has survived all of that by refusing to chase every new wave. It sits quietly on the chest pocket or the back of a beanie and lets people's lives do the talking. The factories, the studios, the stages, the job sites, the skate spots. That's where the brand's true marketing happens. In a sense, every new person who wears Carhartt adds a line to the story Hamilton started in 1889. The environments have changed. The jobs look different. The music is louder. But the quiet expectation is the same. This piece of clothing should show up for you, every time, no matter what you're facing. Carhartt never became legendary by chasing attention. It did it by staying honest when everything around it was changing. From factory floors to street corners, from underground culture to high fashion, it proved that real impact comes from real purpose. Most brands try to reinvent themselves when the world shifts. Carhartt didn't. It stayed rooted in who it was, and the world slowly caught up. That's why its story matters. It's not just about clothes. It's about identity, resilience, and the quiet strength of things built to last. And if you like uncovering the hidden stories behind iconic brands, movements, and culture, make sure you subscribe. More stories like this are coming soon.